All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Ryan Rich. I'm the NCSL Executive Director. And thanks for tuning in to the second installment of our coaching education series with APFC. If you were with us for the first installment, we went over a global view of the APFC coaching methodology. And we got some great responses and requests to dig a little deeper into different aspects of it. So today we're going to be looking at how APFC, the training structure, and also how they design sessions, and go into a little more depth regarding how to implement some of their concepts and activities. So with that, we have Mickey and Bernat from APFC, really knowledgeable guys. And as I mentioned last time in our first installment, I am an APFC student. I do their online course. I think it's a really unique offering, and especially having done a lot of the other licensing courses, I think it's really valuable. So I hope that you get a lot out of this. And with that, I'll turn over to Bernat.
Thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. I'm sure that some of you could listen the first seminar we did with Ryan last week. Today it's going to be like a second part where we're going to talk about the training structure and how to design a session. And also we're going to go a little bit deep to the rondo and positional games. And yes, Mickey is our content developer from APFC, and he's going to be the guy that is going to start explaining how to design a session and how it works, the training structure. So Mickey, please.
Hello to everybody. Thank you, Bernat. Thank you, Ryan. It's always a pleasure. Well, I'm gonna share screen to you all, and we'll move it from there, and then I'll start talking. Please, Bernat, tell me if you can see the screen share.
Yes, it works.
Fantastic. Well, as Ryan told, and Bernat as well, we're gonna talk a little bit on, or we're gonna offer a general view on the types of drills that you have for training. We are gonna go in detail to the rondo. We are gonna go in detail to the positional game. I'm gonna show you a little bit, a few guidelines on how to create your own drills, which I think that today it's the most important point. We are gonna review as well some aspects on the SSPs, small-sided games. And the last point, basically it's all what you are gonna be able to do once we finish the webinar today. And it will give you the bigger picture. So starting, we have this table. First of all, I have to say that always the theory and what we talk about needs to go in hand with practical examples, because then you can really see all the process, but we don't have the opportunity to show you the practical examples. So it might be a little bit dense at some points, but I will try to make it as fast and as nice as I can. Okay. The first and most important point in this table, it's you to observe and you to understand that we have several types of drills, and each drill suits well with a certain kind of information, and I'm going to explain that now. As you see, we have sequence of passes that you all know that they are used to work on patterns. We have rondos, which in APFC we believe a lot. We have ball possession drills, which would be similar to rondos. I'll explain the difference. We have drill of zones, which basically would be similar to positional games. We have SSPs, we have the small-sided games, and obviously we have the the games, the 11v11, or games where you use larger structures. I have highlight rondos, positional games, SSPs, and small-sided games in black, because this is the way in which we work, and this is the most relevant drills from all of them. The first and most important thing to understand, is that drills, they have always intrinsic targets, and that we as coaches, we need to design and we need to think about the soccer targets. So one thing is the intrinsic targets that the drill has, and the other thing is the soccer targets that we put into the drill, because that's the information that we want the player to learn. What does it mean, intrinsic targets? Intrinsic targets, it means that the drill itself, as any other game or as any activity that you present to our players, needs to have a target. Players will be doing that for some reason. Obviously, in rondos, as you can see, the intrinsic target of rondo, basically it's to keep the ball. There is nothing else that we can do in a rondo. We will always be asked to keep the ball in a rondo. If we put positions to the rondo, which I explain later, also we can, apart from keeping the ball, we can progress in the game. We can move forward, to say it somehow. Positional games, as you see here in the row of positional games, the intrinsic target of a positional game is to progress. Positional games, as I will explain later, they have positions. So the fact of a positional game to have a position means that there is a direction, and if there is a direction, it means that the players are supposed to move the ball forward from a beginning zone to an end zone. SSPs, the same. Probably the biggest difference between SSPs and positional games, though we can find variations of positional games that they have goalposts, the SSPs, basically it's that apart from progressing, apart from moving forward, we are required to finish up in net, and same than small-sided games. The difference here is that small-sided games, because they are small, probably the concept of progression dilutes, and we mostly have the concept or the target of finishing up in net. As long as attackers have intrinsic targets in those drills, defenders have them as well. So if the target is to keep the ball, obviously the target for the defending team is to recover the ball. If the target for the attacking team, as in positional games, is to progress, to move forward, the target inevitably for the defending team is to avoid such progression and recover the ball. If the target in an SSP, the intrinsic target again is to finish up a net, the target for the defending team is to avoid opposing team, the attacking team, to finish up in net. Then on the third column, you got the soccer targets. The soccer targets, it's APFC concepts, the information that we want to transfer to our players and the advice that we want to give to them. Opposed to an intrinsic target, keep the ball, it's a platform, but it cannot be a target by itself. We cannot tell a player to keep the ball. Obviously, it's what we want him to do or what we want her to do, but he needs more information to eventually fill this box. And the information he needs, it's precisely those soccer targets. What can we work in rondos? In rondos, mostly, we should work individual foundations. For example, here in this table, I have written the use of back foot to move the ball away from pressure. But same that I have written this one, I could have written that we will use a rondo to work on the concept ball never stops, or that we will use the rondo to work on the concept, speak through the ball, or that we will use the rondo to work on the concept of body profile, or that we will use the rondo to work on the concept of visual fake. But the concepts that you normally train when you use a rondo, all of them, they are universal foundations. And as we spoke previously in other webinars, universal foundations were those things, those information that increases the efficiency for any player to play soccer. The difference between rondos and positional games, well, the most relevant one is that positional games start to have positions. So if we have positions, apart from individual foundations, we will also work on individual foundations, but according to the specific position of a player. In SSPs, larger training structures where we have different lines of players, maybe it's a time to focus on team foundations. This doesn't mean that we will not find universal concepts nor individual foundations per position, but probably team foundations or even specific movements or ideas in our game model will have a better implementation if we use SSPs. And finally, small-sided games, again, they refer back to mostly individual foundations. But the biggest difference between those and rondos is that obviously you have goalposts, obviously you have to finish up in net, and it's time to maybe be a little bit less restrictive about the rules that you put to the drill and let the player use all the information and all the knowledge that he has to foster his creativity. Below in the orange box, there is the most important point of this slide, and this is crucial. If we are not able to understand this, then all our training drills will be wrongly designed from the beginning. When a player or when a team, whoever is playing that drill, accomplish the intrinsic targets, accomplish keeping the ball, accomplish progression, accomplish finish up in net in case of SSPs, for example, we reward this team with points because they need to feel that they are doing something to achieve a target and get a reward out from this target. So we achieve them with points. But the accomplishment of the soccer targets, so for example in the rondo, which the intrinsic target is to keep the ball, and we will decide that to keep the ball it's to do 6 consecutive passes. So we will give a point to do or to achieve these 6 consecutive passes. If instead of awarding or rewarding the point in that way, we put it on the use of back foot, obviously we are not targeting development because we are trying to make the player behave or make the player perform in the way that we want and in the way that we are telling him to do. So the accomplishment of soccer targets, basically what it will provide is adaptations to the game, and eventually it will provide player development. And the biggest challenge we as coaches is to know the mechanisms and to know the way in which we as coaches, we can make sure that we see or we help the players in finding these adaptations. And we will do this basically by guiding the drill, basically by offering players additional information that he will have to put his attention to get an advantage over the game and eventually be able to keep the ball a longer time. So this is the biggest challenge, and this is one of the things that we have to do as coaches. Moving forward, a little bit more of specificity. Rondos. Well, some features that you'll always find in rondos. Rondos normally or generally use small spaces. The ratio between attackers and defenders will be related to the difficulty of the rondo. It's not the same to design a 4v1 where there is only one defender than a 4v2 where you already have two defenders, than a 5v3 where you already have three defenders. It's not the same. Space itself, how big, how small it's the rondo, it will be closely related to the difficulty. Small spaces, pressing, it's coming faster, less time to decide, obviously greater difficulty. Bigger spaces, pressing, the defending man, it's coming slower because the distance is larger, so we have more time to decide, and the difficulty decreases. Some coaches, and this is something that Albert always tells, and I learned it from him, some coaches says, yeah, but my players, they are not good enough to perform a 4v2 rondo. They keep losing the ball. Besides trying to focus on the universal foundations or what they do right and what they do wrong, maybe the initial problem is because our space it's too small, and the pressing, the speed at which the defender comes, it's too high. So maybe simply by making that space bigger, by increasing distances between the player with the ball and the defender, we reduce difficulty, and all of a sudden our players, despite doing still a bad control, this will not mean ball loss because the defender has not yet reached the position of the player with the ball, and therefore, even though he has done a bad control, he can link his action and maybe eventually perform a pass. So that's a very important point also to keep in mind as coaches. Rondos basically imply the interaction between the player with the ball, me, possessor, and my nearest teammates. There are not farther away ones. It's not common to see them. There is not a third line of players, so the situations that they try to recreate, it's situations where we only find the interaction between the player with the ball and the immediate or nearest teammates. Normally, rondos do not use match positions, but they could. This is a large area of conversation and a large area of discussion. The way in which a rondo could use match positions, it would be maybe referring to the player with the ball as he is always the number 4. So they eventually understand that when the player has the ball, he's the number 4, and the player that is opposite to him in a rondo would be the number 9. This is being made because then the nearest receivers, they always try to find good body profile, and they are facing the ball and the farthest away player, which is opposite to him. But it's a discussion here. We could argue a lot, but that's not the intention for today. And finally, as I told, rondos are efficient in training universal foundations. Which ones? Then you have it on the following box. Foundations that affect the attacker with the ball possessor. Ball never stops. That's something you're going to find in a rondo. The importance of controlling the ball away from pressure, moving that ball away from the defender. You obviously will find as well concepts such as visual fake, intent, or say through my body profile that I'm going to pass the ball into this direction, but eventually deceive the defender and pass it into another one. Break lines, as long as we have two defenders, because if it's a 4v1 rondo and there are no two defenders, there are no lines to break. Speak through the ball. If I pass the ball to the back foot, if I pass the ball to the nearest foot, how is my pass, if it's a pass with a lot of weight, if it's not a pass with weight, all these effects, or it's a concept that you can see in the rondo as well. Play what you see. It's another concept related to the player with the ball that you'll see in a rondo. Concepts that are meant to be guided to the player that is attacking, but it's not in possession of the ball. Body profile, between lines, again, in case we have a line, types of support, look at the player with the ball. Is he free? Is he pressed? Shall I move closer? Shall I move farther away? Move towards the opposite direction of the ball. That's a fantastic concept that sadly we don't have that much time to explain it, but it basically refers to the idea of that when the pass is being delivered, the direction in which the ball moves, the receiver, not the immediate one, but the farther away, moves into an opposite direction to open up the space and to be in a good body profile as well. And for defenders, there would be concepts such as block inside passing lanes, turn numerical disadvantages, sorry, not advantages, disadvantages into equal numbers, no? Obviously a 4v2 or a 5v3 is a numerical disadvantage, but maybe defenders pressing in some way, they can turn this situation into a 3v3 and eliminate two of the attacking players. This will be done by the correct shape of the defending players. So there are many things, but mostly all of them individual foundations. I have created kind of a frequent asked questions that could be or people could have in mind, just to further explain about rondos. And the first would be, do we focus on attacking foundations or defending foundations? Well, as I told you, the rondo has severe constraints to efficiently target adaptations on the defensive side and to really work on defending foundations. Why is that? Well, because here again into the discussion, no? If the rondo is not directional, because it has no positions, then the defenders, what space they are exactly protecting. And if we try to have in mind or picture ourselves a 4v2 rondo where the ball it's moved really fast from player to player, the defenders end up moving in a way that probably it's not really accurate or it's not really transferred into a match situation. Constant changes of direction, sometimes running in circles, because that's what defenders eventually do in the rondo. Maybe those are not adaptations that we want to see in our defending players. So that's why probably rondos, while or when they are really good tools and drills to work on attacking universal foundations, we should be really careful when pointing or targeting defending foundations. Also, as I told, what's the difference between using 1, 2, or 3 defenders? If you use one defender, there is no gap to protect. There is no space between his position and the position of a nearer teammate who is also a defender. So there is no gap because there is only one player. If we have 2, we have this gap. So we already have an inside space to protect. If we have 3 players, apart from having a gap between 2 players, we also have maybe a shape, a defensive triangle. One player presses the player with the ball, the other 2 players cover up for the space at his back and close other passing lanes. So there are many considerations. It's not, oh, let's do a 4v2 rondo because that's what I see on TV and that's what they say it's the key for player development. Every decision that we make, including 1, 2, 3 defenders or different attackers, influence the environment, which is a very crucial word, the environment that we create for the players. And we have to think what happens if we change the numbers and how the concept changes and other ones appear. More to the rondo. Mikel, that's fantastic, but I have lots of players and I need larger structures, but I don't want to start playing by positions. I want to keep it without positions, maybe. Then you have the ball possession games that we mentioned earlier. Instead of doing a 4v2, you do a 10 versus 6, following the same principles than the rondo has, which is basically keep the ball. And you'll find probably also lots of universal foundations in that drill. And this is the second box. It's even more important. I think you have to pay a lot of attention to this. How many universal foundations can be trained at the same time? I was telling you that the rondo directly targets concepts such as back foot, ball never stops, attack the ball, body profile, visual fake, but how many of them can we really include in one rondo? How many? I think it depends basically on your capacity as a coach to highlight and transfer those information to the players. What it's for sure is that if you don't say anything while the rondo is happening, there will be no concepts in that rondo. If coach doesn't really take an active role in guiding the rondo, if the coach doesn't highlight the information that he wants in a rondo, if there is no guidance, there are no concepts. But it's also true that maybe it's better not to say anything rather than saying wrong things. So here it's your responsibility to get all this knowledge right, to be able and to be really aware of what you are trying to say. That's quite visual, actually. If I say or I give one-time feedback on the concept of back foot, I have my 4v2 rondo happening right now, and I tell the player, well done, fantastic, you have moved the ball away from pressure. And if I say it one time, do you think the player is gonna generate an adaptation? Do you really think that this information has eventually reached his mind? What happens instead if I say it 100 times? Maybe if I say 100 times about the back foot, then the player might finish the drill with some better idea on what's the back foot and why it's useful for. But also here it's tricky because we can say 100 times feedback on the concept of back foot, or one-time feedback on 100 concepts. I can say one-time feedback on body profile, one-time feedback on attack the ball, one-time feedback on never stop the ball, one-time feedback on visual fake, but this probably it's not gonna work. So basically you can include as many universal foundations as you want, as long as you keep your capacity to deliver. And your capacity to deliver, it's not your own understanding, but what eventually the player receives as information. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that this information is useful for the player, and obviously APFC concepts they are, because they help the player to succeed in the game. Maybe if the player uses back foot to control the ball, it helps him in no longer losing the ball. So if he doesn't lose the ball, probably he will longer keep the ball. If he longer keeps the ball, he will have a higher chance to keep getting points in the drill. So the player sees a connection and how the concepts that you are teaching him really improve his adaptations to the game and make him more well, that he possess a better understanding and more domination about what's happening. The relationship in the last bullet, it's actually very important. It needs to be fun. If it's fun, then you have to make it challenging. Fun and challenging, it's the best combination, but not depressing. I mean, also careful on the pointing system of your drills. If a team is very good in keeping the ball and the two defenders, they are already 20 points down, what's going to be their motivation to really keep working on what you are telling them to do? So all these are considerations that they are very important, because it's a really frequent asked question. How many foundations, how many universal concepts do you train at once? My answer, it depends on your capacity to deliver, but keep in mind that to deliver, you really need to know that it requires more than one time to tell the information to the player. As we already talked, APFC concepts fit the rondo, or there are concepts that are more keen to be used with our drills. That's again, and maybe it's the biggest point today, that's again the importance of you to understand that rondos are ideal to universal attacking concepts, not defending, because we already explained the reasons behind that. That positional games are ideal for universal foundations per position, and that maybe team foundations, they need larger training structure, bigger training structures through drills like SSPs or even full matches. And another nice question before I finish, sorry. I finish with rondos, and Bernie shows some examples of rondos, which will shed some more light in regards to this. It's when I should train them. Well, what is the level and age of your teams? What is, or are you involved in foundational training, or are you involved at youth elite level? Who are you targeting? How many days you train per week? Is there a consideration on the conditional aspect? For example, obviously, and this is a whole new topic, and I don't want to state the universal truth, but obviously at under 8, under 10s, under maybe even 12s, there is no consideration on the conditional aspect, because a kid can play as many hours as he wants, and there are no physiological changes that really increase his performance on the conditional side. But under 19s, in an elite level, the conditional aspect, it's perfectly merged together with the training of concepts throughout the week. At elite level, precisely, it follows the sentence of, do you follow this structure of competitive microcycles? Yes or no? If yes, rondos will be more keen on one day and less keen on the other day. Competitive microcycle, basically it means that you have a recovery day, that you have an intensive day, an extensive day, an interaction day, an activation day. Different days consider different loads from a holistic point of view, but especially also on the conditional side. So the rondo will be more keen to be introduced maybe in the day that you practice those small situations, which probably it will be the second day of the week, or the day +2 or +3 after the previous game. Maybe on the extensive day, which basically means that you use larger spaces. Why you would really use a rondo if rondo recreates small situations? So those are considerations that you also need to keep in mind. But those considerations, again, they're basically applied when we are talking about under 16s, under 17s, under 19s, obviously under 23s, elite levels, which the main or the ultimate target, it's performance. If your training, it's foundational training, if your training, it's to improve your kids, to provide them with essential tools to know soccer the best, then rondos can be included almost every day, normally at the beginning of the training session, and that would be a little bit the sum up for rondos. Maybe also good point, That's again a really good point, because coaches don't think of these things, but those are the most essential. You have 18 players, but you are only one coach, and you do, okay, no problem, I'm gonna do 3 rondos, 4v2, that's fantastic. I have sorted my evening. Training is sorted, at least the first drill. I'm gonna do rondos. They are gonna do it maybe 2 series of 10 minutes. So I'm gonna have my time occupied for the next 20 minutes, 3 groups of 6, 3 4v2 rondos. We are 18 players, no problem. But you're only one coach. So you are with 1 rondo, and the other 2 rondos, they have no coach. So as we said before, no guidance, no information, no advice, no trying to target players to learn something. It's the same as having no concept. So also an important thing to think about. But Mikel, if I'm the only one, then it means that I cannot do rondos. Well, maybe you have to find solutions then. And the solution was precisely those of the ball possession games, which they use larger numbers and probably recreate similar structures and isolate similar concepts than the rondo does. So I'm gonna give, before we start with the positional games, because now the thing gets a little bit more complex.
And Mickey,
I have offered you the overview of rondos. I'm gonna pass the word to Bernat.
Mickey, this is Ryan. Can I follow up on one thing?
Yeah.
Quick. So just on the last slide there, because I think it's just important because I know they're on this webinar. I'm sure there are some technical directors and along with coaches. But what would you tell a coach or a TD that says my kids aren't technical enough to do rondos, and so we should, and kind of reiterate that, and then so as a way to say we should always be doing unopposed passing. Like, what is your response when you hear that? Because I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah, I get. Me and Bernie, we get that a lot. My first response would be first, opposed or compared to maybe passing patterns where you think that you isolate the technical gesture. The first thing of all is that passing patterns, they don't have any opposing players. So if there is no opposing players, there is no decision making. Without decision making, eventually, lately, you'll not be able to play the game. But I understand a lot coaches that say, but look, mate, I'm putting this 4v2 rondo and we don't do 2 passes in a row. Ball, it's always out. There is no continuity. Yeah, but the continuity or how fluent is the game, it's something that it's only affecting you as a coach, because you want to see the ball moving fast. You want to see a lot of passes. You want to see how your players get better into that. So yourself, you get frustrated and you say, no, there is no continuity. I want everything to be perfect. So I'll rather use a passing sequence where there are less mistakes than a rondo. But this is all your own representation of reality as a coach. So I think that's a very huge mistake. I would say make the spaces bigger, make the spaces larger, put a 6v2 in a really big space. So defenders, they never, or they are not able to really press the player with the ball. They are little kids. They cannot run this distance. So the player with the ball will always be almost as a free player. Player still knows that there is opposing players, but you recreate the sequence of the passing pattern because the opposition is less, but you're already inside the structure of a rondo. And with time and with practice, then you can make this space smaller, and eventually the players find comfortable in resolving situations that you didn't expect. But this is the way I would face it, because I had faced it in the beginning. Every coach that coaches starts at some point, and after a few years, it's at another one. And when I started coaching, I also said, I cannot do this drill. They don't have the level. This is impossible. They are losing the ball. and I was getting nuts because the things, they were not implemented in the way I wanted. But Albert here has a lot of experience. It's a tremendous guider in those situations, and basically it's what he told us. Guys, make the spaces bigger. Space is big, pressing comes later, you have more time, and the player gets used to the technical activity, but with opposition. That would be my reply. Bernie, something?
Oh yeah, excellent. It's exactly this. You can play with the spaces, or even play with the number of the players that are defending. Instead of a 6 versus 2, you can do 6 versus 1. You can even do a 8 versus 1. I think it's starting from the 4-1 rondo, going to even a 8-1 rondo with the players that they don't have a lot of level. It's good, and it's realistic because there is opposition, there is pressure, and this is the real technique because every action is different than the other one. And as Mickey said, you really need the variable of the position to really understand your technical action. So spaces and numbers of the players that are defending.
I think that Bernie now said as well the key to that. He said every action it's different than the previous one. When you have opposing players, when you have defenders on your drills, they are never gonna run in the same way to you. The distances are not gonna be the same. The pass that your teammate gave to you, it's not gonna be the same than the previous one. So all these different situations, what they do is they enrich your adaptations to the game. But if you do a passing sequence with no opposing players, where you have to beat a cone or a marker with your back foot, cone will always stay the same place. So I think there is not a transfer to the game, actually.
And through my experience, I have coached really good players and also players that were not as good as the others. And the ones that improve more technically through the rondos are the ones that are worse than the others. The players that have the worst technique or worst level are the ones that improve faster. Because these players, they were never exposed to concepts like body profile, back foot, head up, and consequence of these concepts, your technique improve. I think we focus too much on repetition of actions that where there is no decision making, where we have to repeat the first movement 1,000 times, and we think that technique is that, and it's not like this. I think by introducing these concepts to players that they were never exposed to these concepts, consequence of that, the technique improve a lot. And I have seen the difference better with the players that are not good, and the ones that are good, of course, they improve a little bit, but the ones that are not really good, they improve. The difference is huge. It's huge, really. So try this. If you think you have a team that is 7, 8 years old, they're starting to play soccer, start with a 6-1, 7-1, and this team will improve faster. You will see the difference faster than if you are coaching a 14 years old team that is the first team of the club. I think you will see what I'm saying right now, and it's an important point. So the rondos are even more important for the players that are not good than for the players that are really good. That's my advice. So no excuses on not doing rondos.
Actually, what Bernie said again here in the last sentence, the rondos are even more important for players that are technically less sound than other players. It's the same that I was trying to say when we talk about when I should train rondos. If I have an under 19 elite squad, maybe the adaptations that rondos generate to them, it's not as such as by doing other drills, and maybe I don't have to include them that much. That was the point.
Now, if you want, I'll show you some examples of different players doing rondos. Some of these players are really good. Some of them are professional. So let's go to the examples. Mickey, I think you have to stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you can see this. It works.
For me, yeah, a bit slow, but it works.
Okay. Okay, here we have a rondo. We have 2 squares. We can, there are a lot of different rondos. It's not only about using big spaces, or it's not only about using only 1 defender or 2 defenders. You also can play with the structure of the rondos. In this situation, there are 2 squares. Why 2 squares? For example, here in that rondo, we are working a lot on breaking the line by putting a free player in the other square. Players really understand why the breaking the line it's so important. Every time that they play with the neighbor, the ball is still in the square, but every time that the ball is played in the other side, like now, the player is alone, 1 versus 0. But at the same time, you will see that we are constantly telling to the players back foot, body profile. This player now, for example, the one that is receiving the ball is facing the whole field. Consequence of that, he's able to control the ball with the back foot. And I think it's really important. Mickey also talked about the importance of the movements. One player should be close, one player should be up, how the players move, thinking that there are positions. Here, for example, there is a mistake because there are 2 opponents that are able to control 3 attackers. We never want that 2 players control 3. So this player, the opposite one that has no ball, should be farther. Farther, because always the 2 players that are on the flanks must be diagonal to each other to give different heights. We will talk about this more about the positional games. So here, head up, back foot to go forward, facing the whole field, always showing a good body profile, and always trying to find the player that is in the other side to break the line. Let's see if there is an example now. Now there is a really good example. That's the best pass in soccer because you break the line, you eliminate 2 players with only 1 pass. And in this, this is a good example of players that are 11 years old playing a rondo. As you can see, the spaces are big enough. We have put these 2 squares to really, we want here that players break the line a lot. So you really can play with the structure of the rondo depending of which is the main objective that you want to happen. Then here is the one that Mickey was talking more about, the 4-2, back foot, breaking the line. Okay, here an important point. Mickey also talked about the concept of speaking through the ball. What does it mean? That this player has a lot of pressure, the teammate has passed the ball to the next player to the front leg instead of the back foot. Why? He's telling him that he has pressure, so consequence of that, he will play 1 touch. He's using the front leg to play 1 touch. Be careful when you pass the ball to the front leg. Why? Because consequence of passing the ball to the front leg, this player now is only facing one way. He doesn't have a good body profile anymore. In this situation, it's good because he had pressure. So this player has told him to play 1 touch by passing the ball to the front leg. And now we break the line. But here there is a mistake. This player is passing the ball with his first touch and he has space. Another important rule about the rondos is how many touches, 1, 2, 3 touches. Really, some of coaches thought that Barca style, it's always play 1 touch and quick. It's not about playing quick, it's about understanding how to create advantage. If I pass the ball and I have a space, I don't win anything with that pass. I don't create any advantage. So in that situation, this player, as you can see, has a space, plays 1 touch. What we win with that pass? Nothing. The same distance that this player had before is the same distance that this player now has with his opponent. So we didn't attract the player. We didn't eliminate any line. Consequence of that, now we have a 2v2, really bad body profile. Why this player has a bad body profile? Look at that. Look where the pass is going. You will see that the player, instead of pass the ball to the back foot, is passing the ball to the front leg. Now this player is not facing the opponents. It's really important. There is another universal concept that we talk a lot in APFC, that it's control forward, which it means always try to control the ball facing the pressure, not control the ball towards the pressure, but at least control facing the pressure. So as you can see in rondos, it's constantly a lot of actions. Back foot, try to control back foot all the time to go away from pressure. Here again, more examples of the 4-2. For example, in that situation, the player got pressure. First of all, Mickey also was talking about the importance of should I go close to help my teammate, should I go far? Now my teammate, as you can see, has pressure. Because he has pressure, I have to give support. I have to give like an emergency line. I have to help him. Because that, I come close. And because that, my teammate passed the ball to my front leg. That means one touch. Another mistake, this player was alone. He doesn't need to play one touch. He has to control, attract, and when the player comes, release the pass. You will see that also in positional games, we will talk that there are two ways to attract the players. One is by repeating the pass, and the other one is by controlling and waiting to the pressure come to pass the ball. Really, in youth players, we like more the idea about control the ball, attract the player through my first touch, and then release the pass. Because these kind of actions of repeat, repeat, repeat are really good. But in youth players, we want the players to control. We want the players to really understand why it's important to attract the players. We don't want the players all the time to play one touch. This concept is more for the professionals. For example, Pep Guardiola, he uses a lot. Instead of ask, for example, to the center back to control the ball and wait to the opponent come to pass the ball, or go to the opponent to attract him, what the center backs do a lot is play one touch to make the opponent come, repeat the pass, and then break the line. By repeating passes, you make sure that your team is together. But this is another aspect of the positional play that another day we will talk about that. But what I want to tell you is the importance of not playing one touch if there is a space. Breaking the line again. Now this play really good. You saw that he had space. He decided to control the ball, wait, and when the pressure comes, try to pass the ball. Here there is a mistake because he waits and he passed the ball to the neighbor. He should not pass the ball to the neighbor. Also, he should pass the ball to the back foot to help the player to beat the player because my teammate is in the same line with the opponent. He's in the same line, so only with the first touch he could beat him. But he has to do this technical action with his front leg because there is the pass is not to the back foot. Okay. This is another example of another rondo. Here you can see it's a different structure. Here we're working more on the forward across, but we use this structure to really work on the same concepts that Mickey was talking about, the universal concepts, but at the same time use the concept of the day that could be the forward across. Okay, one more example about a positional game, just to introduce a little bit the positional game, and now Mickey is going to continue with that. Positional games are the progression of rondo, where we have here, yes, we have real positions. Okay, that's really important. And here we have three lines, which is defending line, midfielder, and forward. Here, that player is the 4 and that player is the 9. Also, you can play with that. You can play that. You can use this player as 11, or you can use this player as a 7. So it's depending of which directionality you want to give, and what is the goal of the drill. Important things, always 10 and 8 playing in diagonal to each other, which one come close and which one goes up. If this player is facing to that side, this should be in the same line with the teammate. Now here there is a mistake. As you can see, this player is asking the ball in front of the opponent. That means that the opponent has the reference of the ball and has the reference of the opponent. He controls two references, and the player that received the ball is only able to look at the ball. So every time in the positional game, every time I receive the ball in front the pressure, important to repeat the pass, play what I see. And now is the player that is facing forward the one that breaks the line. Here the same, this player is doing a mistake. He is not in the same line with the teammate. He should move a little bit up to be in the same line with the, in the same line with the opponent to beat him with the first touch. One more example. Now, that's an incredible example. We have the 6, we have the 8, which is all far away, diagonal with the 10, and the 10 in the same line where the opponent is. Only with that, he's able to beat him with the first touch. Now, this go close. Now the opposite 10 moves away. Only by that, the center back is able to break the line and find the farthest player. Why he did that? Because if you could see the player who is pressing center back, he made a curve. So he forced him to play to that side. Only by playing behind the line, he's able to find a superiority advantage because he is behind the line. We break the line, diagonal pass is really important. And now we are able to go forward. And now again, now this player is a center back and start the game to the other side. So as you can see, there are a lot of actions that we have to correct in the positional game. This is a little bit, I gave a little bit of a taste of some of the concepts that we really need to understand. It's not only about the universal concepts that Mickey was talking about, it's also about understanding the positions. It's through my position that I beat the players, and it's through my positions that the balls move. And now to finish, you can see here examples of professional teams doing that. Just 10 more seconds of an example, and now Mickey will continue. It's the same positional game. It's a 3-3+2. Bayern Munich under Pep Guardiola, they are using that. But here, as you can see, the space is really, really small. Why small? Because the quality of the players is way better than the ones that you were seeing before. So always playing with the spaces to work on the concepts. That's another positional game, 4-6-9. It's the 4+3 positional game. There are a lot of positional games. There are ones that are better than the other, depending of which concept you want to work on. But here, you must to really talk a lot. It's the progression of the concepts that Mickey was talking, and we add the positions and the fundamentals per positions, which is the difference between the rondos. So I just wanted to show a little bit of some examples to you have more a visual image about what Mickey was talking about. In our online course, we have a lot of examples, a lot of positional games, a lot of rondos, a lot of SSPs, but here I show you a couple of them. So now with that, Mickey, I stop the screen, stop sharing that. and now you can introduce why the positional game is really important.
Digue'm si veus bé la pantalla un altre cop.
Sí, 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 es veu bé. Es veia molt bé nosaltres, no?
Sí. Okay, well, I think the image was a bit slow, but it's what we were introducing before. A lot of universal concepts, both for the attackers and defenders, defensive reference for the defenders, don't lose sight of your direct opposing player while you're looking at the ball as well. Lots of universal foundations in positional games as well for attackers, as you have seen, speak through the ball, body profile, tag the ball, never stop the ball, break lines, visual fake. And Bernie, what he has done, it's a very, very good thing, because at each action, each control, each pass, moment after moment, there was something to really correct into the players. But again, the big question mark is, what are we telling to the players? How many different things are we targeting? And what is the efficiency in transferring our information from our brain to players' brain? Because not by telling a lot of things and on a high frequency will make the players adapt quicker. Also, I need to really get in place my observational skills to efficiently identify what they are doing wrong, to later tell them the information that I think it's going to help them to adapt better to the game. It's a whole process. The first, obviously, it's understanding what we are talking about, which you all do. And the second one is how to communicate it, which is where a lot of coaches lack. And this is something to really think about. Positional games, as Bernie told, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on that because you already have seen it. Small, medium, larger spaces. Obviously here again, the ratio between attackers and defenders change the difficulty. It's not the same 3v3 plus 2 than 4v4 plus 3, because in a 3v3 plus 2, our superiority it's plus 2 precisely, the two neutrals. But in a 4v4 plus 3, our superiority is plus 3. So there are three players that they are free, actually. So it's not the same to play one positional game or to play the other. Question that I have here, the 3v3 plus 2, it's used for something, and the 4v4 plus 3, it's used for another thing. Well, this we don't know. This you have to create your own positional games and see that they are the best structure for the thing that you want to train. What you'll always observe on there, it's the universal foundations and obviously foundations per position. But if you want to observe something more, if you want to recreate structures to isolate additional concepts, as you will see now in the next slide, then you have to create your own. And one might be useful, but just by adding or eliminating or taking out a player, the next one will no longer be useful. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Space, as I told, or as we told, it's also very significant, big, small, that relationship to increase or decrease complexity. Positional games, compared to rondos, they include already the farthest away player, the concept of the farthest away. It's not only the player with the ball and the nearest teammates, but there is a third line, as Bernie told. Positional games, by definition, there is no other way. They use match positions. This is like this. We see a number 4, a number 6, a number 9, a wing and a fullback, depends on how we design them. Here it says rondos, but it's positional games. Positional games are efficient, as I told again, for universal foundations and universal foundations per positions, also maybe for team foundations. Positional games always show direction. As direction appears, intention also does. There is this aim of moving forward. And positional games, generally speaking, vaguely speaking, they are targeting build-up phase and progression phase. We're going to see one example now. We're going to go very slowly because I think there's a lot of information to absorb. But let's see if I explain it clearly and we get the idea out of it. First of all, I want to see, or I want you to look at the picture, at the drawing. That's a 4v4 plus 2. I just designed it this afternoon. It's a new one. It's no template. It's no positional game that it exists. I just did my own positional game before to try to explain you that you can create any drill that you want. So you don't have to pick drills from others or anything like that. Positional game. If we refer back to what I told you, what should be the intrinsic target of this game? Obviously, as we were talking about positional games, progress. If we go back to the famous table, we look at positional games, intrinsic game for attackers, progress. Obviously, progress. In a positional game, you'll always have to progress. You'll always have to move forward. From where to where? Well, in that case, in the picture, from center back in purple to number 10 in purple. When number 10 receives the ball, then he becomes the center back. And the farthest away is no longer the center back, but the striker. We could eventually make only one-way progressions, and when they get the point, then feed another ball. It could be done, but we encourage that games are continuous, they are fluent, and players understand the adaptations or their change of position once the ball is played to the opposite flank. Very, very, very important. Also, look as center back and number 10 change their position depending on what is the direction. Also, this affects the players. It affects number 2. If we play up, it's going to be number 5, sorry. If we play down in the other direction, it's going to be number 2. It affects also number 2, who will become number 5, 6 and 8. They will change their positions as well. For the defenders, well, the guy that presses the ball here, now it's number 9, but when the ball is in the opposite flank, in the opposite side, he's going to be the first defender, and he's going to be precisely the number 9. And also, when we explain this to the players, because it takes time for us to understand and to explain it, we should also explain to the players how they will change their roles. The defenders, when they recover the ball, probably they'll play to a neutral and they'll activate their attacking sequence. So the defenders they need to know and understand where they are going or which role they will be assigned with when they are on the attacking phase. If we see or we try to make a mental representation of how this game would go, I think it would go actually quite nice, because number 9 in blue would press the center back, because if not, by playing the ball directly to the other player, they would get points. So that player would always be pressing the center back. But probably the winger here wouldn't be man-to-man with the fullback. Why not? Because we have placed 2 players at each side of our number 10. So if this guy moves closer to the fullback, there will be an open passing lane to this guy. Then, or which controlling with back foot, he'll be able to play to the farthest away neutral and get the point. So probably this structure already makes the concept that we want to work possible. Because if we see or we go into what we want to work, what is the soccer target of this positional game, we want our attacking fullback, that guy, this one here, look at my arrow, we want this guy to dominate his positioning in regards to the ideal width and to the ideal depth. As the pointing system rewards to play from neutral to neutral, purple to purple, the forward play, this one, will always be pressing, but the winger, as I said, will be closing inside. So this will open the space for that guy to make him understand that as deep as he can position, when he places himself in the same horizontal line as this player, only by using back foot, beating the player with the control and passing the ball to the opposite neutral, probably his team will already get a point. But instead, as Bernie was saying, so I linked the information with him, if he plays in front of the winger will have both reference and he will never be able to beat that player with the control. So here imagine, we have a positional game, we have several positions, center back, fullback, midfielders, number 10. We cannot address all of it because it's impossible. We can address the information depending on how many additional staff we have with us. What I want to address maybe as the first coach, it's precisely this importance for the fullback to understand that he has to be at the same height than his direct opposing player. Maybe my assistant coach, it's addressing the movements of both number 6 and number 8 while attacking. And maybe my conditional coach, it's guiding the defense to try them to make pressing in such a way that this helps even to create a better environment to see what we want to see. And despite focusing on these individual foundations per position, we still have all the universal habits: diagonal passes, body profile, break lines, visual fake, all these that the course constantly repeats because they appear everywhere. So there is a lot of information happening in the same situation. You can take it from a universal perspective and only look into that from a coach perspective. You can look it from the positioning perspective. That's why we're in a positional game. We could also look at it from a team foundation. If we would make the defenders press in a certain way, in a certain shape, why not? This could be used in a match situation where our striker and the wingers, our first line of pressure, tries to perform a certain behavior. So again, your capacity to deliver, it depends on how many people is helping you and what you really want to focus on. Without telling the player exactly that information. The player needs to feel that after you're guiding him in understanding that situation, what you are telling him, it's useful for him to be more successful in the game. The last box in green here, it's just, well, the rules that we could add to the defending team, or while the team is involved in defending, to even make the environment more accurate for our attacking players. So conclusions after that, and I know that I'm being repetitive, sorry. What's our capacity of implementation? Are we alone? Do we have additional staff? We need to know what we want to train. I knew it before designing the drill. I knew it, what I wanted to train. I wanted to train the foundations of fullback, and I wanted to explain my fullback that he should be always in the same horizontal line than the winger to beat him with the control. I wanted to train this, so that's why I have created this drill. I have not taken a drill that I have seen and then add all the content. No, I knew the content, I knew my soccer target, and then I designed the structure. How many things? You might have a first target or a first soccer target or a second one, or even you might have 3 of them or 10 of them. But this, again, depends on how many resources you have. Once I know who I can count with, once I know what do I want to train, maybe I need to pick the best drill for it. If precisely I'm targeting a foundation for a fullback, definitely need a positional game, or I could also have used as an SSP. Maybe the SSP would have given me more specificity on that fullback to show him in a match situation what I want to do according to my game model. This comes later. At the end of the day, what we need is a lot of experience. We need to create our own drills at all costs. There is no shortcuts, and there is no other way. Create, improve them. Ask for feedback, because it's the only way to get your drills in a much better place. Number of players, space, the positioning of those players. As soon as we change them, maybe we blow up the entire soccer target of our drill, and it opens up a new scenario. So we need to be really aware of that as well. You'll see an example now. Rules constraints that to the team that it's not supporting the soccer target, in that case the defending team. The pointing system, so crucial. What does it happen if I let the attacking team get point every time they play from one side to the other up to 10 points? If this goes up to 10 points and it's a 10-0, will the defending team really work on the way that we want if the drill is already lost? If we limit the pointing system maybe up to 3, the attacking team that is dominating the drill, maybe after losing the ball, they know that if they don't do 100% efforts, they'll get scored a point, and instead of winning by 3, they'll already be winning by 2. And all the domination, all the superiority, if we limit the points up to 3, up to 2, up to 1, it depends on what you want to do. You encourage already a connection, a real connection with the drill. For example, in my team, in the under-19s of Sabadell, our points are limited to 1. You can only be winning 1-0. So if you lose the ball and you don't defend, they will draw, and it's going to be 0-0 again. What do you achieve with that? A constant activation on the players, as well also to transition habits. But this is a more complex step. The day of the week, time of the season, emotional status, all relevant variables that affect how you can design your positional game. It's not the same, again, to do it in the intensive day, the day +2, after the previous match, where we need maybe small spaces, then do it in our extensive day, the day in between, the day that it's at the same distance from previous and next match, where we will use larger spaces, where we will try to find bigger conditional adaptations. Our positional games, they won't be the same. We will not use 3v3 +2 because it's not the day to do so. So all these are variables that you need to keep in mind, most especially when the level increases. If your coaching is still foundational, then it's something that you can put aside and not pay that much attention to it. Let's see again the example, see how it changed now. It's the same space exactly, same space than previous one, same. Instead of a 4v4 +2, it's a 6v6 +1. The neutral or the advantage now, it's inside, it's where we have the free player. But look what happens if the number 9, instead of pressing the center back, he decides to stay down with the purple player. Then it would be an equal number. All a 6v6 situation where our only free player is the player with the ball. If he's the only free player, maybe to get an advantage for any of our midfielders or inside players, he needs to start dribbling instead of passing. But if he dribbles, maybe that recreates a situation that it's more similar to opposing teams defending at their own half. So if that's the real situation, if now, because only the striker decides that he will not press the player with the ball and he will fall back to make the situation in equal numbers in a 6v6, only because of that movement, the entire drill changes and the adaptations that we wanted to use for our fullback, they are no longer useful because the winger has no longer the necessity or the need to move and press him, because there is no way for the attacking team to find the player that is in the other side and get the point. You could turn this into 1,000 situations. I just explained a silly one, but the conclusion it's this. It's you need, when you design a drill, you don't need to put the players in a paper. You need to do 1,000 mental representations of this drill, find or try to do some mental research in what would be the preferred possibilities to solve your problem, because then you'll get a clearer picture on how your drill evolves. So you need to, at some point, you need to have the capacity to read the future, which obviously it's more easy once you have had a lot of experience and you have watched a lot of game situations that make you understand what are the most probable adaptations or behaviors that you can expect from your players. But this is it. This more or less is the process in which how you design your positional game. A process that it's specific when targeting individual foundations. Positional games, it's over. Again, it's an area where we can talk a lot, and obviously we need this practical implementation of it. It would be great to show you on a pitch how to use all these coaching resources to improve your drills. We move now to SSPs, then small-sided games. We're almost finishing. Small SSPs use medium, larger spaces. It's not frequent that they use small, but I will put you one example. The ratio between attackers and defenders, again, related to the difficulty. Important point, the third one. Both teams possess a structure. You need to make your teams, both the attacking and the defending, play under a structure, not a system, a structure. Maybe 4-3-3 without the striker against a 4-1-1. The defending team has a 4-1-1 without the striker as well. And with this structure, see what would be the adaptations or the specific foundations that you want to target. SSP also implied interaction between player with the ball, nearest ones and farthest away. Use match positions always, and they are most efficient when training team foundations, also individual foundations per position, also universal foundations. But if we want to train universal foundations, we would use rondos, maybe positional games. If we would want to train individual foundations per positions, we can use SSPs, but we would prefer positional games. But SSPs directly target on team foundations, and also on a later page on our game model, which are the situations that we design to confront opposing team under our own criteria. SSP, what universal foundations? All of them. What foundations per position? All of them. What team foundations with SSP? Build-up phase foundations, progression phase foundations, finalization phase foundation, penetration movements, which they are included in the last third, open and close spaces as such, which they imply all the three lines at the same time, both the possessor, near teammates, and farther away. That means the three three spaces, open and close spaces. So many things that they can be trained with an SSP. An example, silly example, it could be better done, but I just want you to get the picture. First, again, the intrinsic target with SSPs, remember the table, it's to progress or finish up in net. Finish up in net, it depends on the SSP, because here I have put one that it's not frequent, it's just a 4v3, but it's still an SSP. So I will tell you now why finish up in net wouldn't be here advisable. Yellow team, as you see, 4 fullback, center back, fullback. They support the target, which is precisely to progress. We don't know yet if the target is also to finish up in net. And blue team, striker, 2 wingers. They try to avoid progression or avoid the finish up in net by yellow team. We'll see now. What's the soccer target? Foundations of build-up phase. Okay, very general. What foundations? We are talking about team foundations. We are no longer talking about universal concepts. We are no longer talking about individual foundations per positions. Now we are talking to foundations, team foundations that maybe apply to a group of players. In that case, applies to the line of defenders, both fullbacks and both center backs. The foundations basically are solve the numerical superiority, which is a 4v3. We could add variations to that. Maybe we could include an additional defender that makes it a 4v4, but then we would have to put a midfielder that drops down to make this superiority. We can change that. It's just a silly example. Even though we are targeting team foundations, such as solve the numerical superiority, we have individual foundations per position, obviously, because players are playing according to their position. And we have also universal concepts, obviously, because they always appear in the game. And then I design my drill. And my drill, it's simple. It's a 4v3 where we need to circulate the ball to solve 2v1 actions against the winger or 2v1 actions against the striker. So basically resolve the superiority using central channels or outer channels. If I put the goalpost, maybe I generate the wrong adaptations on my players, because the goalpost is really powerful in soccer. So if I put the goalpost, maybe my players start doing behaviors that they wouldn't do in this kind of position while they are facing a match. So it's something open to discussion, and something for you to think. Maybe if you want creativity, if you want your team to be aggressive, if you are really brave, you put the goalpost, and then I'm sure that your fullbacks will start moving inside to receive a pass and progress. And maybe you generate an adaptation even though when you're doing the build-up phase. If you don't put the goalposts and you get point only by progressing, only by reaching the end zone and by dropping the ball there, probably your adaptations there will be more static, more conservative, more similar to a game situation where there is a lot of risk in this zone. But again, see the process. I know that I want to work on the numerical superiority of my line of build-up, so I designed this drill, and then I start thinking about the rules, about the constraints, if any, because now the mainstream coming out from Barca, that we have good context in there. It says that there are no longer rules, that there are only well-designed environments, that you cannot force players. It's a whole discussion that is coming up, and obviously they also make their points. Basically here, rather than supporting one stream or the other, it's you to understand what it's all of rondos, positional games, SSPs, and how I should approach to them while training them. Obviously, the best way to approach, or the first or most necessary step that you need, it's first to know soccer as a whole, to know all the parts. Second of them, to have a team, obviously. And third of them, to have the experience in designing drills and what tricks help us to efficiently reach a particular concept. That's another completely different SSP. It would be now, that's a proper APFC SSP, bigger structures, progress from center backs. Now blues are supporting the target, from center backs to finish up in net. Now obviously you need goalposts. You could include goalposts here for the transition in order to make sure that as a secondary element, while the team is attacking, also the concept of offensive coverage appears, very important. think about the placement that you should have while attacking in order not to let opposition build quick counterattacks. I would say, or I have decided that now my soccer target is 1v1 offensive at the flanks. Look that this is no longer a team foundation. It's probably a universal concept, no? Because 1v1 is a universal concept. Obviously, it's merged into the bigger picture, which is third zone. My foundations here per position would be referring to the winger or the number 8. And my universal concepts would be precisely 1 versus 1 offensive, how to perform it. For the farthest away players, such as the striker and the opposite winger, the concept of going to finish versus waiting to finish, how I should attack the box, what is the timing behind that. So that would be a kind of a structure that would work for that. Obviously, through rules, through constraints, through additional information that it's too specific to show it in a PowerPoint, you would enrich this environment and probably isolate better the concept that you wanted to train in first place, which in this case, and for this SSP, even though they are useful to apply team foundations, it was just the 1v1 offensive at the flanks. Finally, because I know that I'm being a little bit boring, the small-sided games. Small-sided games, it's the time for players to really implement everything. There have to be almost no rules or very soft constraints. It's their time to experiment, to practice, to foster their creativity, to play according to the concepts that they are learning. They have to be competitive. It's a time of training to look for that decision making that sometimes we as coaches, we don't reach. It's the time to make the tension between coach and player less, because if we want to really command and create adaptations on the player eventually is fed up with all our persistence. So it's a time for the player to be a player, because again, linking it with the previous slides, remember that the most crucial was fun, challenging, but not depressing. Positional, small-sided games, it would be probably a time to include the element of fun in our players. There are several types of position games. So small-sided games, but it's where you have more flexibility to step back and be a little bit more laid back in how you want to deliver the information. So basically, this was today's topic, general overview on types of drills, rondos, positional games, SSPs, small-sided games, all that what we are telling you, how to approach them, highlight and underline the importance for you to create your own. Only once you have the information of soccer and you know the details, you'll be able to create better drills, and how to distribute them among the training practice. It's not criteria that you can really follow. There are no universal truths, but maybe the progression of using the rondo, then a positional game, turn this into an SSP, and finally the small-sided games, where obviously you'll have different amount of concepts depending on the drill, and you will be targeting the three elementary and basic blocks that the player needs: the universal concepts through rondos, the universal foundations per position through positional games, rondos as well, and SSPs, and the team foundations through positional games and SSPs. Eventually, the last thing, it would be to include a little bit of your game model, but obviously this is the last step because the game model is just the soft appreciations that really fit your players' characteristics. So I hope this was useful. We have talked a broad topic, so there will be a lot of gray areas. My intention was not to state a universal truth. It was just to throw information and more tools for you to dominate the art of coaching, because it's what it is. It's an art and it requires a lot of dedication and access to valid information. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot, Mickey, walking through that presentation with us, and sharing your the session design and the whys behind what you choose to do in a session. I know you spent a lot of time talking already, but I just wanted to maybe offer up any potential questions that people have. If you have any questions, maybe put in the chat box. While we have Mickey here and Bernat here, and if you have any to follow up before we end. So if you got any other questions, feel free to type those into the chat box now.
I mean, while you are thinking about the questions, I just want to let you know a little bit about some points that Mickey talked. Mickey he explained today really well the training structure, and the training structure it's really important. But I want to let you know that it's the concept that makes the drill, and not the drill that makes the concept. So training structures are really important, rondo are really important, positional games are really important, but at the end, the key of everything are the concepts. So as much concepts you could use any positional game, you could adapt the positional game a little bit, but only with the concept you could help the players a lot to learn that. I know that some time ago we used to think that for that concept we need that drill. For that concept we need now another drill. The good thing about the rondos and positional games is that you can apply a lot of the concepts. They have a lot of content, but as a coaches, you need to learn that. This is the key. This is what really APFC is, and what is our methodology, which we broke down soccer in a lot of concepts, and the training structure is the key. Also, it's really important, but even it's more important, learn all the concept that soccer has.
And so, Bernard, have you seen the questions kind of coming in?
I'm just showing now. Okay. What's the biggest difference between SSP and small-sided games? Okay, now I'll answer this, and Mickey also, if you have some points, you continue with that. SSPs is more about tactical intentions through your universal concepts that you have learned as a player. There is a directionality where you have to progress through decisions, so players really need to understand what they are doing. You need to create advantages, and the main goal is to score a goal, but through your understanding of the game, not through your creativity. In APFC, we don't believe that everything are concepts. We believe that methodology should be 50% concepts and 50% creativity. This is because also we always finish the trainings with small-sided games. Why? Because small-sided games is not about create advantages, how to progress to the next zone. Should I break the line? Should I now pass the ball to the back foot? Small-sided games, it's like a jungle. It's where players, they don't have time to process information. So they really need to take risks. Actually, the word should not be take risks, because risk is a negative sentence. It's a negative word. Should be try. The players encouraged to try as much 1v1s as possible. The 1v1 it's a really important concept of soccer, and small-sided games are really important because encourage the player to be more creative. It's what Mickey was saying. We don't have to correct the player. We don't need to really ask to the player to apply all the concepts on the small-sided games. We want the player to do mistakes. As much mistakes he does, he will try it more. What happens so many times is that coaches are getting better. So coaches are having more knowledge about the game, that they are getting too much into tactics. And every time that the player loses the ball, they kill the player. So then this player never will be creative. And we have to find the balance through concepts to creativity. That's because in the small-sided games, we want the players to do mistakes and encourage them to do mistakes. But on the other side, in the SSPs, we don't want the players to do mistakes. We really want the players to understand what is the best pass, where they should be, what's the best way to progress forward. Yes. What's the youngest age group to apply this information? I mean,
Back foot, 2 years.
yes. I mean, there is no age. A lot of people ask this. What is the? I mean, of course, there are some concepts that are better for when you are younger. In the APFC online course, there is a video that's called APFC Phases, which we explain which are the concepts that a player should learn when he's starting to play soccer, 6 years old. So there are concepts like back foot, head up, body profile, directional controls, attacking the ball. All of this is the fundamentals that players should learn when he is even 6 years old. Then there are some APFC concepts that are collective universals, that it's a consequence of my teammates also understanding the concept. For example, the third man, that I will not never teach to a player 6 years old the third man concept, because it's a collective universal. But all the individual concepts, the individual ones, head up, back foot, even the break the line, which is the player teach to the player head up to find the farthest teammate, the opposite movement, all of these movements are habits that players should start learning when they are 6 years old and until they turn pro, because these are habits. And in order to become this a habit, you need a lot of time and hours and trainings to apply this concept. That's because Mickey was saying in the rondo, you should repeat as much as possible all the time, back foot, head up, break the line. The coach should not be like silence. The coach should be talking the whole time when the rondo it's being played. Would you say that SSPs are positional games with a finishing target? Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. SSPs are positional games with finishing target. You're right. It's exactly this. Would you end the session with medium-sided games or large-sided games, or stop with the small-sided games? This.
I can answer this one.
Yes, answer this one, Miguel.
First of all, it depends on how many days you train. Normally, small-sided games, they could be small-sided games, even a 6v6 if the space is small. Medium-sized games, they are, in terms of concept, they are almost the same than a small-sided games. And large-sided games, it is recommended to at least one time per week have a game the same way in which you play. But I'm also telling you another thing. If you do an SSP using a larger structure, maybe 10v10, but in an SSP, you can adjust it to be similar to a large game, and then there is no need to include the large game after the SSP, and you can go back to the small-sided game. That is not an exact number. I mean, at the end of the day, it's for you to experiment and think or train or use what do you think that your team lacks the most. This is a progression, rondos, positional game, SSP, small-sided game, that it's efficient, but it could be remove the rondos and make positional game SSP large-sided game, and another day it could be only rondo, positional game, and a small-sided game without the SSP. The idea is what is the age of your players, what is the level of your team, do I really have to control the conditional load, because conditional load also affects the performance of my team. It's not worth, or it's not valid to say, no, conditional load always affects, so that's why I'm going to focus on that. No. This is not true. Conditional load is only implemented when the target of your team is exclusively performance. So when you are sacked if you don't win the next match, and this happens in very few divisions, or if it happens in your club, then it means that if you don't have the division, you are in the wrong club, and it's very important as well to understand.
Okay. How teaches 1v1 situations for 6 years old? 8 years old. Okay, at this age, the most important is to create an identity. What does it mean? That means that this age, the player has to find, has to really understand which kind of player he is, what he's doing good, or what she's doing good by himself or herself. How we can do this as a coaches? How we can really see what are the characteristics, what are the good skills that the player is doing good by himself. So a lot of freedom, a lot of drills that the player is constantly trying situations of 1v1. The best way to teach 1v1s, it's a lot of small-sided games at this age, but not 4 versus 4 or 5 versus 5. It's small-sided games, 2 versus 2, 1 versus 1. Maybe the bigger one at this age, 3 versus 3. You can even teach to the players or tell to the players that before they pass the ball, they have to do 3 touches. Why 3 touches? Because only by doing that, if the player has to do 3 touches before he passes the ball, that means that the pressure will come to him. He cannot pass the ball by using 1 touch. He cannot play simple. We don't want the players at this age to play simple. We want the players of this age being exposed to situations that they don't like. Because by being exposed to these situations, they will understand and they will potence his own characteristic as a player, his own identity. So your job as a coach is to encourage the players to do the things that they are doing good by themselves. So a lot of drills that 1v1s, 2v2s, a lot of small-sided games. In young players, we will not talk about SSPs. 8 years old, forget SSPs. Rondos, positional game, depending of which one, but really rondos, and a lot of small-sided games. Okay, if a group is keeping possession well for a long time, but at the cost of taking risks, body profile, back foot, do you stop the rhythm of the session often? Mickey?
I never, once the drill has started, I never stop the drill, because the players, they want to play, but that's me. I make the corrections. Maybe if my drill has 2 series of 8 minutes in between series, I gather them together and I make a small feedback through questions. Normally, I take 1 ball and I pass the ball to the player. I'm coaching under 19s, the highest level in Spain, and I do this. So I think it's something that you can do always. I would do it even though if I was in a higher team or at a senior level that I have been. I take the ball when it's post time, water break. I throw the ball. I ask them questions, and I want them to answer me what they think or what they feel the drill is about. I don't stop unless maybe I'm in a situation with larger spaces and there is repeatedly a mistake on that, then I stop. But I do the feedbacks or at water breaks, or I do individual feedbacks out of the training session in another time. I do a lot of one-on-one feedbacks at the time that we are not training. Training, it's for training, and training it's to get as many ball situations and as many playing situations as a player can have in the period of time that he's involved with training. But that's personal. Every coach has his own style in regards to this question.
I think the important thing here is to teach the players, but not to show that you are the best coach in the world. There are some coaches that they are constantly stopping the practices to show to the players that they know a lot, that the coach really knows a lot, to show himself that he sees all the mistakes. And when we were talking about correct the players on the rondo, correct the back foot, correct the break the line, correct constantly, we are not talking about stopping the practice. We are talking about correcting at the same time that the ball is being played. We only stop the practice if as Mickey said, there is a huge mistake that is happening constantly, or because the attitude of the player is really bad. But important to always make sure that the player is enjoying. We're doing this for them. Don't stop every time you see a mistake. And I'm saying this because it happened to me when I start coaching. I start learning and I start seeing that in a rondo there are more than 40 concepts, and I was getting excited. And every time I saw one mistake, I stopped it because I was feeling the best coach in the world. But it's not about this. It's about to correct at the same time the ball is being played. What else?
I think that's it. Mickey and Bernat, I want to respect your time here. You've almost been off 2 hours presenting here. Really good information. I really do appreciate you taking the time, and hope that people participating got a lot out of it. And thanks for the questions at the end, clarifying some of those things. And maybe Bernat, just quickly before we leave here, do you just want to tell anybody here about APFC or what they?
Yes. So as you know, as we mentioned today, we have this online course where we talk about the training structure, but mostly it's all about concepts that the player must to learn. And it doesn't matter if the player plays in USA, in China, or in Europe. It's our concepts that a player must to learn everywhere, because like head up, breaking the lines, between the lines, back foot, body profile, speak through the ball, opposite movement, play what you see, all of these are concepts that you need to learn to play soccer. Then we will talk more about model and all of this. But really, when we talk about positional style, when we talk about all of these styles, we want to show to the coaches that it's a consequence, everything is a consequence of understanding those concepts. It's not a consequence about understanding if there are two forwards where I go, if I'm doing man-to-man what I have to do. Really, the player should have the universal concepts to then be exposed to more tactical situations. But first of all, this. Then is what Mickey was saying. We will talk about game model and all of this, but never the game model first and after the universal concept. So in the online course, you will see a lot of concepts that are universal and individual. And this is especially for coaches that coach youth players. Youth player means players from 6 years old to 18 years old. As you know, Albert Puig, he used to be the technical director of La Masia, Barcelona. He explains these concepts and he always worked with players. He spent 30 years only with youth players, so he really knows. He really knows what is the detail and what really the player need to understand to be better. Also, I want to let you know that for all of these coaches that you're here today, and all of them that belong to NCSL, we would like to offer 30% of discount for the online course, which you will have access to all of these concepts, and you will have access to a Facebook group that we have with all the coaches and more coaching education. So if some of you are interested, we would love you to text us to info@apfcourses.com, and we will answer and we will help you as much as we can. So I hope you enjoyed. Any doubt you could have, we are happy to answer you, and you can reach us through Twitter or email. And thank you, Ryan and Mickey, and hope you enjoyed and you learned. Mickey, Ryan, we don't hear you.
Sorry. Thank both of you. Thanks both of you for this presentation. And and if they want to reach out to you to sign up for an online course, what was that contact again?
Info at apfcourses.com. I'm gonna text it here on the chat.
Okay. Info at apfcourses.com. Okay, great. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Yes. At any coach that sign up, as you know, Ryan, we always happy to help you. I know that you had the chance this year to meet Mickey. He gave you support to any doubt you had. So it's not only about selling this methodology. We are here also to help you to anything you need.
Yes, yeah. As I mentioned last time, I've been on the phone call with Mickey over in Spain for 2 times for I think 2 or 2.5 hours. So I appreciate your time, Mickey, and your openness, and both your openness to chat and to share your knowledge. So thank you, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.